I was hoping for some house music, but I'll settle.
Really?
For that. I was. I'm from New York. I was like, Puerto Rico! Oh! Okay. Hola, ¿cómo estamos? Don't get carried away. I only got one more line. Estoy bien feliz estar aquí en Puerto Rico. Thank you for having me. I am thrilled to be here, and I also have some regrets. I am 46 years old, and I have never had the opportunity to be surrounded by such smart, beautiful, and fabulously dressed women in my life. I texted my wife and said, so how do I say you look fabulous? And she's like, are you saying it to one person? Or are you saying it to a group? Who are you saying it to? And then she texted me back, and I said, oh, that's too long. I'll just say, you look fabulous. You look fabulous. I am thrilled to be here. I am currently a professor, but I didn't start out that way, because you know what they say, if you can't do, you teach. But I have done a lot, and I realized that what we teach is not helping people do. I was born to a single mother. I was raised between New York and New Jersey. I was told no a lot. We were raised on food stamps, and I would go to the store with my mom, and I would cringe if I saw a classmate when she broke out the paper. I would say, can I get some new shoes, new clothes? She would say, no. I had the privilege to go to a private high school. I said, can I play golf? She said, only if the clubs are free. When I was in that school, I said, there's only one university that I want to go to, and that's Georgetown University. And the career, that's right, Hoya's in the house. That's what I'm talking about. Look, we are everywhere. I love it. And I told my career counselor that, and she said, yeah, you should probably look at some other options. You're not going to make it. And I went home and I said, she told me I can't go to Georgetown, I don't understand. And so I realized then that we are filled with people who are afraid of our own power, who are afraid of our own voices, who are afraid that because if we are successful, they will be displaced. And I realized that as I went on to graduate from Georgetown, to start a company, after I was told by the lovely Small Business Administration, anybody know the SBA? Yeah. They're better now. They're better now. But when I went through with my business plan, which was to start a financial services company, because I was a finance major, because 2 + 2 was always 4. We constantly rewrite history. I always get left out of it. People look like me. And so I said, let me stick with numbers. And I went to the SBA and I shared my business plan. They said, this is not going to be successful. I said, what do you mean? They said, well, you have 3 strikes against you. I said, oh, this is going to be good. They said, 1 year in debt. I said, well, no kidding. I didn't really say no kidding, but I don't want to offend anybody. I said, I just went to 4 years at Georgetown. I'm broke. I took out student loans. Of course I'm in debt, but so is everybody else. She said, 2, there are no women in finance. I said, really? I said, okay. And she said, 3, you're black. I said, well, unfortunately, you've given me 3 things that I can't change, so let me just get up out your time. And what's interesting is that I literally saw this woman about 18 months later. And by that point in time, I had started my company without them, and we were about to be sold. And she said, I hear you got some money. I said, yes, I'm about to sell my company. What on earth do you want? And she goes, we'd love to make an investment now. And I said, I don't want it now. But I also realized that people are afraid to risk. And that's unfortunate. And so I want to spend today talking about and kind of contextualizing the 3 C's that I learned early on that clearly are not just applicable to me, but I think to most women. Confidence, content, and capital. The capital, I'm not talking about the financial capital. That helps, don't get me wrong. But it's a social capital, and you've got that because you're here. You are surrounded by folks who are clearly willing to help you and be of service and share. The confidence part, thank God for Think Big dolls, because I'm spending a fortune on American Girl for my kids, and it ain't doing nothing for their confidence. They keep saying, how do I get my hair like that? I'm like, it ain't gonna get like that. It's just not gonna happen. We all try, we try different things, but it ain't gonna happen. So I really wanna spend some time on content. And content to me is just having the facts. To make those no's not personal, but being able to counter with facts that will undermine all of the negative things they're gonna say. And I wanna do that in the context of innovation. I've had the privilege to live in New York, I live in DC, I've lived in San Francisco, I teach on a college campus. We use this word innovation all the time. It's like, woo, it's out there. And what does innovation mean? Come on, after your sandwiches, what does it mean? What does it mean? New. Different. Better. I like the better. That's sometimes. What else? Unique, right? Innovation is essentially change. And it starts with some things we all have. Mark Zuckerberg did not wake up being innovative. He wasn't even innovative, he stole somebody else's idea. But the idea is that it is a progression. It is a progression and a manifestation of skills we all have. Anybody have kids? Yeah. Say it proud and loud. Yeah. Anybody got 6 kids? I do. I don't clap most days, but they're not here with me, so I can clap today. But let me put this in some context. There is imagination. I've got 6 kids, 4 girls, 2 boys. Boy, have they got some vivid imaginations. Something's gonna get me at night, Mommy. I have to sleep with you. No, you don't. Something's gonna scare me at night. I need a dog. No, you don't. But wild imagination of things that don't exist. And then they would create these stories. What's gonna come, it's gonna get me, it's gonna transport me. And I'm going, no, it's not. No, it's not. And I would say, well, how can I help you feel safe? And I would think of things. I'll buy you a little pillow. I'll buy you a stuffed animal. Then I said, well, let me think about what else I can create. And I came with lots of options, and none of them worked. And then I said, okay, I got it. I'm gonna literally make this piecemeal doll that stands at your door that is tall and formidable, and it's gonna protect you. And they slept like babies. And that was innovation. It was imagination to creativity, innovation. Now, where I messed up is I didn't sell that idea to Disney, and then I would have been an entrepreneur. But the idea is that innovation is something that we all have. The challenge is, as women, we spend so much time running around, we don't have a time to stop, think, and let it manifest. So when we think about innovation, it's all these great things. Break from previous practice, it's a greater purpose of discovery. In the end, it's change. And let's be clear, we as women are always used to change. We have protected people from being killed because a woman created Kevlar. We have allowed people to see because a woman created windshield wipers. We allow people to recover from their mistakes because a woman created whiteout. We not only bring babies into the world, we make sure they're healthy because a woman created the APGAR scale. And we help drive data to decisions because a woman created the computer compiler. Stuff I didn't even know. But what often happens, we think of those things, we go, well, that's just fabulous, that's for them over there. Because we make it this like mystical experience. But the reality is there's 5 steps to innovate, just 5. And let's be clear, we're good at all of them. First one is collaborate, being willing to work with others. Even if we don't want to, being willing to work with others. The second one is ideate. I don't know about you, but I can't cook to save my life. But when I am responsible for all them kids, we come up with some ingenious meals out of some boxes in a microwave. And the idea that we just continue to ideate, we just generate ideas and we solve problems on a regular basis. Anybody here not solve a problem yet today? Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay. And then we rapidly prototype. And this is key because we oftentimes don't have the privilege to wait for permission or for capital to come to us. And so we're used to prototyping with a little bit of resources and a little bit of support. The most important thing is we listen and we take feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. We're willing to test and analyze and get feedback, and we're willing to do it over and over and over and over until we get it right. That's all that innovation is. The time, the presence, the mindfulness, as we heard earlier, to think and produce and manifest. And there's 4 types of innovations. There's lots of innovation, but they tend to fall in 4 categories. The first is products. We got pens, we got big pens, we got Mont Blanc pens, we got pens for $1, we got pens for $1,000, we got cell phones, we got cell phone covers. Products. We are inundated with products and services. And then there's processes, how things happen differently. I've made some new friends with Oriental Bank. Are they in the house? Orange is my favorite color. Love it. I love it. But innovation there is, thank God we don't have to go into the tellers anymore, although the Oriental ones look fabulous in their uniforms. But we have internet banking, we have mobile banking, we have apps. Processes have changed because of innovation. And then we have position. We talked a lot, we heard from Ron about branding. We can change the way things are perceived. I almost wore jeans for you because I think jeans are dressy, but I was told that would not be appropriate. But jeans is just a minor example of how you can change. Jeans used to be what the poor people wore, what the miners wore, what the people on the railroad wore. Well, you know what? They weren't spending $350 for those jeans. The position has changed. And then there's paradigm shifts. How we used to do something has completely changed. Anybody use Amazon? Yeah. Change how you shop, change what you buy. And unfortunately for me, it has changed my children's expectation of when they can receive things. They are like, the drone is going to deliver my doll any day now. I'm like, you can't find this in the city. Don't worry. So there's lots of different types of innovation, which means you have tremendous opportunity to think about anything as you go along. And it happens anywhere. It could happen in the shower. It could happen while you're walking. It could happen on the beach. It happens individually, institutionally, in a community. We have a living laboratory. Everything you experience is an opportunity to innovate. The woman who created Spanx, she didn't have this brilliant idea that all women wanted to be corseted up on a regular basis. She had a personal experience that she manifested and realized she wasn't the only one experiencing that problem. The most important thing is that we're willing to fail forward. We're willing to make mistakes. One thing we say at our household when the kids make a mistake, we love it when you make mistakes, because it's the greatest opportunity to learn. And so you want to encourage that innovation, that opportunity to risk, take those risks. Ideally, it's something that scales, and it's also a social process. All the people that you can think about in Silicon Valley, they're all working in partnership with someone else. So I don't know if you can see this, but another interactive exercise. Raise your hand if you're a problem finder. Now keep your hands up. Raise your hand if you're creative. Raise your hand if you're empathetic, even when you don't want to be. Raise your hand if you're resilient. Raise your hand if you're well-networked. So you are more than halfway there of being an innovator. So the question is, all this innovation is happening. People say, well, why do you really care about women? And I say, why not? We make 85% of the purchases in the world. We are mothers, leaders, educators, and entrepreneurs. Women use money, resources, and ideas wisely. We are leaders in energy and civil society. Women do things differently than men, and therefore they create differently. Think about what's been happening in the developing country. For better or for worse, women cook. Because they cook, they have actually brought electricity to developing countries. They have brought light to where there is darkness. That's not a minor innovation. Because of that light now in places in India and Africa, there is a 60% increase in young girls and young boys who are completing primary education because of that light. There is a 100% increase in income because now women are entrepreneurs selling that electricity. We are constantly rethinking how we can make society better. And of course, we are entrepreneurs. And we all know now that the UN, a little slow on the mainland, we know that women, not the GDP, is the leading indicator of stability of a country. So why women? This is all the stuff I love to go big or go home, right? We don't believe in status quo, partly because we're never in the status quo. And you know there ain't nobody like me in the status quo. We understand that nurturing is important. Penalizing does nothing, as we're now seeing with the justice system. That it is not good enough to just lock up someone and throw away the key. You have to help them re-enter and be successful. Nurturing is significant. And obviously, yeah, we have all the soft skills, but guess what? We got the hard skills. We can do numbers. We can run statistical analysis. We can depict marketing trends. Hell, we set marketing trends. So we have the skills. But the most important thing about women is we are good investors and we are good investments. If you look at the Fortune 500 companies, any of them that have 3 or more women on the board have increased their return on investment capital, their return on equity, and their return on sales. And that's not anecdotal. Women spend money, make money, and unfortunately usually make money for other people. But we are great investors. This is something that mainstream investment banks have caught on to. I've had the privilege to be a venture capitalist for many years. I invested only in women and people of color. After my lovely experience with the SBA, I was like, if the government can't help me, then sure enough, some white guy in Silicon Valley ain't going to help me. I decided to start a venture fund. And we placed over $130 million in women and entrepreneurs of color. We had 32 companies in our portfolio, 31 exited. The only one that didn't exit, they bought it back because they wanted to turn it into a family business for her family. We realized long ago that people who look like me were good investments. Well, now JP Morgan, US Trust, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, all of them are catching on. And they've created something called gender lens investing. And the idea is making investments framed by the power of women. The goal is to invest in products and services that promote women's leadership, provide access to capital, products and services, you name it. Well, they're a little late because we already knew that. We know that microfinance institutions that invest in women have lower loss rates and lower write-offs. We now know that venture capitalists who invest in women-backed companies, those women have 12% higher revenues than men. They use a third of the less committed capital, and they have 15 to 20% lower failure rate. So now we're innovative and we're phenomenal investments. The important thing also is that we don't give up. We are committed. And this world where everything you can think of is going awry, from the climate to gun control to kids not being educated, it is no longer significant enough to have a conversation in any country about innovation without being willing to talk about sustainable impact. Because too often innovation is just churning through things. But the important piece is being able to have sustainable impact in communities and in countries. And so there's an opportunity for new innovations, and it starts with you. There are movements within the corporate world to make companies accountable for their supply chain. How many of you check how many women work there, how many women in leadership, or how many women are employed before you go to a store? Start tomorrow. It is important that we are able to use our economic power to advance our political and social ideas. And so it is important that we hold people accountable. It's also important that we incorporate gender as a priority of investment policy statements. As a professor, people think that's a big deal. And so I get invited places. And I've been spending a lot of time with pension funds, particularly public pension funds who are responsible for investing your money and my money. And I said, since you are servicing me, I want you to be more accountable to my needs. And we have been advancing places like CalPERS and CalSTRS to create investment policy statements that not only say the goal is to make money for our shareholders, but also to make money in a way that advances women's economic agenda. That we are investing in private equity funds that are investing in women. We're investing in companies that have women in leadership. So it is important that we begin to think about not just our purchasing power, but our investment power. And of course, it's extremely important to think about our political power. Whether we have a woman in the White House or not, being in DC, this is like a constant conversation. All I know is I don't want Trump. The idea, though, is leveraging our political clout, regardless of who you vote for. Hey, I don't care. I'll just move to another country, but it's all good. But it's important for us to recognize that there are multiple platforms that continuously want us to participate and count on us to be economic drivers. It is now our time to make them economic drivers for us. So what happens when you innovate for, with, and by women? Somebody said it. You get better. You get better ideas. You get innovative businesses. You get strong families. You get thriving communities. And ideally, you're going to get a safer world. This innovation stuff is not about special people. These are average people. There is Muna Abusuliman, Rapalong Rabana, Angelica Fuentes, and Leila Takayama. Munis is a UN ambassador. She's a TV anchor. And she's figured out how to use the internet to create jobs for women in the Middle East, which is no small feat. We have Rapalong Rabana, who has been considered the Marissa Mayer of Silicon Cape, Cape Town, South Africa. She created the first VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol. I know y'all know that, but that was just for me. Application. And now she's taking her skills and transforming education in South Africa. Angelica Fuentes runs a multi-million-dollar nutrition company called OmniLife. She also has created a company called Angelissima, which focuses on women in sales in the cosmetic industry. And she has a $3 million foundation that is solely committed to supporting women and girls. And then there's Leila, who works at Google. Not just any place in Google, she works in the Moonshot division. She is working on human and robotic interaction. These are all women that will say they came from modest beginning, they went to school, but most importantly, they made sure that their voice was heard. When you think about what does this all mean, Charles Malik, who was an immigrant to the United States from Lebanon, who was an economist and went on to be an ambassador to the UN, said the fastest way to change society is to mobilize the women of the world. Now, you all may say, duh. But the reality is that we begin to rethink innovation and put the competencies of gender at the forefront. If we begin to rethink economic development and put gender-related economic power and clout at the forefront, we truly can change the world. I shared with you at the beginning that I grew up in a single-parent household. I had a chance to go to Georgetown. I started a company, and I sold it. I then went on to create a not-for-profit organization that trained other people in terms of how they start businesses, namely kids 7 to 21 years old. We started in DC. We expanded to 16 sites in the US and 3 international sites, and in 5 years, we had trained and created over 10,000 entrepreneurs. We did that because it was in the midst of welfare reform, when people were being kicked off the rolls and there was no safety net. And we realized that parents were mobilized by fear, but the young people had a chance to make an economic contribution to their communities. I then had the privilege to work in the Treasury Department. I was appointed by Clinton and did a lot of bank exams. and talked to a lot of people who said we're doing the best we can. And that is the difference between folks who run companies and folks who are innovators. Good enough is never enough. Most recently, in February, I finished serving in the Obama administration. I had the privilege to work in the Department of Education and then move on to the White House to work on the President's My Brother's Keeper initiative. But most importantly, I had the chance to run the White House Social Innovation Fund, where for the first time we placed $20 million in Pay for Success programs all across the country, looking at issues of healthcare, education, access to social services. I share all this because I'm just an average person. I grew up in a single-parent household. My mom cleaned houses on the weekend. I was embarrassed because I would go from our one-bedroom apartment to these palatial estates, and I would say, I don't understand. And then I got bused, a little blue bus, to a private school, and I'd show up in a parking lot full of Maseratis and Mercedes and Bentleys. Well, what are these cars? My mom drives a Vega. I don't even know what these are. And I kept saying, what is the problem here? And I realized that innovation is truly a democratic principle. The challenge is for those of us who have been marginalized by race, by gender, by age, or by class, oftentimes don't have the confidence to say we can. And the most important thing about innovation is not knowing the principles, is not having access to $1 million, is not, despite what you hear, being based in San Francisco in Silicon Valley. It is being willing to use your voice. It is being willing to show your confidence. It is being willing to hear no and mean that has nothing on you. I have probably heard no at least 25,000 times in my life, and that's not from my mom. And one thing I have been committed to as a parent is to not just say no to my children, but to say not that way, but this way. When you leave here, it is going to be important, at least for me, that if you remember nothing else that I talked about, that you remember you have the confidence. You now have factual content to say you're wrong. Venture-backed companies by women are successful, and they make money. And now you've got the capital. I'm 46 years old. Our oldest child is 23. Our youngest is 8. As I watched CNN last night, and I had a moment of silence for the students in Oregon, and I sit in DC and hear all kinds of crazy political debate, whether it's innovation, resilience, or because we know no other way as women. If we do not change now, then who will? And if we don't do it now, then what the hell are we waiting for? Muchas gracias.